So something happened over the weekend. The Wall Street Journal published an article called Darkness Too Visible, really kind of lambasting YA fiction as being too dark for children these days, that it was in fact somehow damaging. And I think I'm going to read the last paragraph of the article just to kind of give you an idea of what the article is about, because it does summarize it nicely, if not infuriatingly. So it may be that the book industry's ever more appalling offerings for adolescent readers spring from a desperate desire to keep books relevant for the young. Still, everyone does not share the same objectives. The book business exists to sell books, parents exist to rear children, and oughtn't be daunted by cries of censorship. No family is obliged to acquiesce when publishers use the vehicle of fundamental free expression principles to try to bulldoze coarseness or misery into their children's lives. So I'm going to link that article in the down bar, and you can go check it out now, check it out later, whenever. I think what got me the most about the article, and the article does discuss specific books, and Jackie Morse Kessler being a friend of mine, her book is discussed in a negative way, in sort of a glamorizing, cutting way, which it's totally not. It's about giving sort of brutal descriptions of what's going on, and how it sort of develops and how it can be fixed, through the course of a fantastical story. And Jackie's a great writer, and I'm certain that there was never any intent for it to be glamorized, because it's not. I mean, I don't think anything that the author mentioned in the article is a glamorization of any sort of self-violence or rape or incest or any of the other things that they're mentioning. What I do think the article is a fanatical child protection stance, and that is what I think is the most disturbing thing about it. And that's probably where I'm going to differ from a lot of the authors who'll be talking about this. And I think it's specifically because I come from a child protection services background, and so that's the state-run organization that goes into homes of children are being abused and remove them and put them into foster care and that kind of thing. I worked very closely with Child Protective Services for a great deal of time as a psychotherapist who worked with very abusive families, very sort of hostile environments, lots of self-mutilation stuff, suicide, even some attempted murder kind of things going on. Really very disturbing stuff. What I learned from my work there is that the whole idea of it takes a village to raise a child, that idea, while being very, I think having good intentions, has actually had an interesting and detrimental side effect. And I'll tell you why. Because the more that parents are able to pinpoint something outside of their family as being a cause of a problem with children or with their child, whether that be schools or sort of social systems or even publishing houses, the less likely they are to take responsibility for their own shit. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, what is a parent responsible for? This may be going way astray of the whole issue about whether or not YA books are too dark for kids. But I think I'll get there. I'll ramble, but I'll get there eventually. And that is that a parent's responsibility is to ingrain certain things into a child. And that is through teaching the ability to deal with crises, deal with people in a real and effective way. And that's through modeling that kind of behavior and not keeping certain things invisible to children. And I think that's what parents are doing a lot now, is trying to keep things invisible. And what better way to do that than taking a fanatical stance against books with some dark content? It doesn't sound fun. And really, what's the point? I mean, if we look at the question, which is, has young adult literature become too dark? And if we look at that as if we put that up as something that even needs to be answered, then I think we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot. It takes us down the path that the ability to deflect what is your responsibility onto someone else, I think that's where that question leads. The real answer to the question is, it doesn't matter. It does not matter whether it's become too dark. Because the role of a parent is to provide and teach the skills necessary to deal with dark events in a child's life. And that's the piece of it becoming invisible. You cannot make these things invisible. You just can't do it. So these discussions are a moot point. Absolutely moot. What a parent is not responsible for teaching is a child's taste level or their tolerance for things like violence or the realities of life. If my parents had monitored those kind of things, because I was reading very, very dark stuff in elementary school and sort of had become desensitized, I think that that led to an ability to do some really tough things later on in life and to be able to deal with crises and things like that. I can directly relate it to some of that stuff, as well as relating it to developing sort of strengths in myself. And I've been able to deal with some really very hard times that have happened to me, sort of emotionally and the hashtag that's been going around this is that YA saves. And I understand that to some extent there's a piece of this, that when you read a book, something in that book sort of chimes for you. You know, the alarms go off and you go, okay, this is what I'm connecting to. This is really helpful to me in that I identify with this and I move on. And I say, yes, that's absolutely an apt reason to make sure that these books aren't invisible to kids. For me, it was a different thing. It was a different experience. You know, I want to be able to say yes, that's a great sort of idea to come out of all of this controversy over this article. But at the same time, whenever any of these discussions pop up, whether it's around bullying or whatever, I take issue with the fact that the fingers get pointed in absolutely the wrong directions. And they need to be around taking responsibility, taking things back, parenting in an effective way that provides children with skills, not by taking away things, but by giving skills. It's like that old adage, give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. Thanks for watching the video. It did turn out to be more of a rant than I thought and took a lot more editing out of some really sort of opinionated crap that comes out. I probably have easily an hour and a half worth of footage on this one thing. And I don't know. I mean, that's just what it is. What do you guys think about this issue? Seriously, read the article. It is pretty infuriating. And I'd love to continue the discussion in the comment bar.